Back in the 80s, there were a number of GM vehicles that used tune port injection, or TPI. These vehicles shared a number of features, including their high energy ignition, or HEI, system. This system was fairly advanced when it first came out and allowed the computer, or ECM or ECU, to control spark timing electronically with a system called EST, electronic spark timing, rather than with vacuum advance. Now, over 30 years later, these systems are starting to show their age. Such was the case with my '87 Corvette, a TPI car with HEI distributor. For the last year or so, my car has been plagued with a service engine soon light and rough running. Just a disclaimer, I'm not a mechanic and I'm not an expert. All I'm doing is sharing what worked for me so that it might help you, and I'm not responsible for you screwing up your car. So after I checked the code memory, it ended up being a code 42. On these mid to late 80s cars, code 42 is a fairly generic code that doesn't really give you much information about a specific point of failure. Rather, it just signifies that there's a problem with the EST circuit and that the computer cannot assert control over spark timing. This will result in the engine running rough, getting reduced performance, and poor fuel economy. Although the code is a generic one, there are only a few things that could cause the problem. The most likely cause for code 42 is a bad ignition module, or ICM. The ICM is the part that actually sends a signal to spark, and it takes input from the computer. If the module's bad, the computer won't be able to control timing, or you won't even have spark at all. Usually, the ignition module will either work or it won't, and the problem won't be intermittent, although that's not 100% the case. This module sits inside the distributor under the rotor and is a fairly simple replacement. Be sure to buy OEM parts if possible, as there are many off-brand new parts that are made very cheaply. The second most likely cause for code 42 is a bad computer. Sometimes as these computers age, even though the computer seems to work properly for other tasks like pulsing the fuel injectors and monitoring all of the sensors, etc., it'll have trouble with the EST system. If your problem is intermittent and the car either runs fine or it doesn't, and it seems to do this at random, then it's likely a bad computer. If possible, find a tested and working original used computer. Newly manufactured computers are similar to ignition modules and are sometimes unreliable. If the problem is intermittent and sometimes comes up in the middle of running, the issue is likely bad wiring between the computer and the ignition module. This is, however, less likely, but it's still a possibility. The wires you want to check are the two that go from the computer to the ignition module. One is tan and black, which is the EST bypass line, and one is white, which is the EST signal line. It's a relatively simple task to see if these are good. Just use a multimeter and probe both ends in continuity mode. There should be very low resistance, less than 1/10 of an ohm. Here's a short clip of me testing the EST bypass lead. EST control line comes out of the firewall, and the other end about to probe on this big connector right here. It's pin D5, which if you're looking at the connector this way, the top right is D1, so we just need to count down 5 this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right above that little notch there. And it's hard to do one-handed, but I'm gonna and I don't know if you can hear that, but the multimeter is certainly doing a steady beep, so we know that we've got a good connection between those two. In my case, the problem was a bad computer. When I would start the car, the service engine soon light would either come on for the first 60 seconds and the car would run rough the entire time, or the SES light would stay off and the car would run okay the entire time it was on. The fact that the code would not set in the middle of running is a sign that the wiring is good. If the wiring were bad, the code would set several minutes into running. I had also replaced the ignition module and there was no change. After I replaced the computer, the code went away and the engine ran better. It also could be my mind playing tricks on me, but I think it may be running better than it was when I bought it. So I ordered another used but confirmed working computer from an '89 Firebird, swapped the PROM chip, and no more code. My money light is off and the car is running just fine. So you can hear it's running really nice now. No problems. Obviously, this code is something that has come up a lot online. You'll see a lot of different answers on forums. It's a fairly common issue with these cars, and the solution will be different for everyone because the code is such a general code. So I hope my video helped for diagnosing, and I'm glad I got mine fixed, and let's hope it keeps running that way. Thanks.